today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. A look at Tamm Thibeault's upcoming fight on the undercard of Taylor versus Serrano 3. She's going to be facing an unbeaten up-and-comer like herself in America's own Mary Casamassa. 25 years old, a southpaw, and a statuesque fighter like Tamm Thibeault is a statuesque fighter. Looking at it, this doesn't look like a given. This doesn't look like a simple bring-along fight, but an actual one. Tamm Thibeault sports a professional record of 2 wins with no losses, no draws, 1 recorded knockout, still making her bones in the paid ranks. The same can be said for Mary, but Mary is a bit further along, sporting a professional record of 6 wins with no losses, no draws, 1 recorded knockout. She's got about 4 more fights than Tamm does, and her quality of competition so far isn't half bad. In her last fight, in November of last year, she faced Brazilian amateur standout Adriana de los Santos Araujo, won a unanimous decision over 8 rounds, and before that, she faced seasoned veteran Olivia Garula. These are experienced fighters that Mary has been in there with, and like I said, she already has more fights than Tamm does. So this is not a given. This is not a gimme fight. This is an actual fight, akin to what we saw between Nat Dove and Nayeli Rodriguez a little over 2 weeks ago in what was their battle of the unbeatens. To be honest, I would have held off before putting Tamm in a fight like this. I would have held off for maybe 2 or 3 more fights before putting her in there with another unbeaten up-and-comer and a southpaw. Their matching are kind of tough in what is only her 3rd professional bout. Provided that she can make it through it, it looks like Tamm is going to have the run of the place in the middleweight division. When she debuted and when I first saw her, I wondered if she wasn't on a collision course with Clarissa Shields. Like so many other fighters that are around these weights, middle, super middle, like heavy. And I wondered if Tamm Thibeault and Clarissa Shields would not cross paths, though given that Clarissa is so much further along in her career than Tamm is right now. Tamm literally just debuted as a professional not but a few months ago, and that Clarissa is all the way up there at heavyweight, and it doesn't look like she's coming down. She didn't come down for Jadeja Green, so I hardly think she's going to come down for an even less experienced fighter in a Tamm Thibeault, and given Clarissa's aversion to working with MVP in any capacity, in any respect, these two aren't on a collision course, which essentially means that provided that Tamm can beat Mary, stay in the winner's bracket, continue to develop, she could very well have the run of the place. Now, Clarissa Shields is still registered as this division's WBA and Ring Magazine champion, but she hasn't boxed as a middleweight in something like 2 years. The Maricela Cornejo fight in 2023. And there's no sign of Clarissa Shields moving down. I believe she's becoming more insistent that any girl that wants to fight her will have to move up. The only other champion at the weight, Desley Robinson, as of December of last year, who holds both the IBF and WBO titles. She's some years older than Tamm Thibeault. Seems a beatable fighter to me, a beatable champion that in a few fights, Tamm will be ready for somebody like Desley, but as far as Clarissa, it's not even a subject. The WBC title is registered as being vacant. It's up for grabs, though to my knowledge, I know of no contest where that title is going to be on the line at this time. Now, Tamm Thibeault's first 2 professional starts were fought for 3-minute rounds. If she wants to become WBC champion, that's going to have to change. She's going to have to fight in 10-2s, not 3s. The World Boxing Council has made it clear that they will not sanction a women's bout for 3-minute rounds. Just something to think about. Tamm can always shoot for a Desley Robinson fight, and I imagine that because Clarissa's not going to be returning to the middleweight division, that WBA title she still holds will eventually go vacant. For now, she has to contend with Mary Casamassa, another unbeaten fighter like herself, and like I said, it's not a given that she wins. This is not a gimme fight, but a genuine one. And we'll talk more about it as the fight date approaches. Elsewhere in the world of boxing, some seething comments from veteran promoter Bob Arum on Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.
It's not even boxing.
At 93 years old, Bob Arum is still firing off strongly worded boxing takes. His latest target? Jake Paul versus Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. In an interview with Fight Hub TV, Arum declared that the fight was not even boxing, that he thought Chavez Jr. had retired a long time ago, and that Jake Paul is not a boxer, and that was just in his first sentence. Though dramatic and exaggerated, his points aren't without merit. Chavez has fought only once since December of 2021, winning a unanimous decision over mixed martial artist Uriah Hall last July. The Paul fight may be real boxing, but it will certainly get attention disproportionate to its quality, and Paul has been around the sport long enough by now that it's glaringly obvious he has no intention of taking on an even money fight. When you levy that criticism against Jake Paul, do realize that there are many bona fide boxers, quote-unquote real boxers, that don't want to take on an even money fight. When has Gervonta Davis ever been in an even money fight where he wasn't the favorite going in, where he was fighting someone who people thought would beat him? When has that happened? Are you sure you want to criticize Jake Paul for that? Once upon a time, Chavez was a world champion, though he was also infamous for his drastic rehydrations. Boxing scene's Kieran Mulvaney once called him the best cruiserweight in the middleweight division on an old episode of the defunct Ring Theory podcast. Since a listless 2017 loss to Canelo Alvarez, in which Chavez lost every round, he's had one foot out the door, out the sport, fighting just 7 times and losing 3 of them, and mostly fighting over scheduled distances shorter than 12 rounds. Paul was last seen winning a decision against a 58-year-old Mike Tyson last November, which Arum called demeaning for the sport of boxing. Arum did tip his hat to Jake Paul, albeit in a roundabout way. Asked which top-ranked fighter would make an appealing matchup with Jake Paul, Arum floated heavyweight prospect Richard Torres Jr. and hard-punching former undisputed champion Artur Beterbiev, who, as it happens, had previously called out Jake Paul on social media.
But Jake Paul is not fighting a real fighter. Jake Paul is smarter than you and me combined. It's not a scam because people know what they're getting, but he's not interested in fighting somebody that would really give him a whipping.
Well, that's just it, Bob. Is anybody in boxing? I mean, how many offers from Matchroom have gone out to your fighter, Brian Norman, and how many of them has he rejected? I don't think he's interested in getting a whipping. We know that Gervonta Davis isn't. Didn't want to fight Devin Haney. Didn't want to fight Shakur Stevenson, Teofimo Lopez. Vasyl Lomachenko in his prime. Gervonta Davis was not interested in fighting in an even money fight, a fight where he might lose. See, anything you can say about Jake, you can say about a lot of fighters, a lot of the quote-unquote real boxers. I've said it in previous videos that Jake Paul is a mirror held up to boxing's face, showing it its true colors, that maybe he is an opportunist, but so is everybody else in this industry. So what are you mad at him for? I'm not. They were all up in arms when he fought a 58-year-old Mike Tyson not that long ago, but look now, Mario Barrios is about to fight a 46-year-old Manny Pacquiao, who's coming off a loss and hasn't boxed in 3 years. Don't pretend that it's different, because it isn't. If Jake Paul is an opportunist for fighting that version of Mike Tyson, Mario Barrios is an opportunist for fighting this version of Manny Pacquiao. And I don't see enough people criticizing him for it, but they should be. He's a world champion. Jake Paul is not. Mario Barrios, as a world champion, should be held to a higher standard than a social media influencer who's moonlighting as a boxer every so often. I don't actually get mad at Jake Paul or his events. It's free enterprise, capitalism, that if he can find a willing dance partner and an audience that's willing to be there, pay to see it, in person or at home, more power to him. Now, Jake did not take Bob Arum's critiques lying down. He responded by saying, "You woman-hating geriatric. You got dropped by ESPN, lost Shakur, Teofimo, and Crawford because you're greedy. Your team is getting sued for doing business with criminals. Keep my name out of your dentures and keep pushing Nico Ali Walsh, who's a quote-unquote real fighter, right?
Once again, Jake Paul is making a valid point, and that's what I kinda like about this guy. He's holding up a mirror to boxing's face whenever he does an event. And the real reason they're mad at him, it's not simply because he's an influencer moonlighting as a boxer, it's because he's successful. You don't see people attacking KSI as much as they like to attack Jake Paul when KSI is essentially doing the same thing. They get mad at Jake because he's more successful at it. At its base, it's his success that makes them angry.
But I've long maintained that Jake Paul was successful in his own way and his own arena before he stepped foot in a boxing ring. All he did was bring that audience to boxing and catch a few stragglers along the way, some in the boxing sphere that might be interested in what he's doing.
My honest opinion, I don't have a problem with Jake Paul. Now, do I consider his events bona fide boxing matches, legitimate ones? No, not really.
I mean, I don't tune into anything that Jake Paul is doing for the same reason that I'll tune into Usyk versus Dubois or Inoue versus MJ. I take Jake Paul's events as a spectacle. It's entertainment, sports entertainment. And I'm okay with that.
I don't have a problem with him fighting a washed-up former champion in Julio Cesar Chavez, because how many quote-unquote real boxers don't spend the first few years of their boxing careers fighting washed-up fighters? Washed-up former champions and/or gatekeepers, journeymen.
Like I said, before you criticize Jake Paul for fighting a washed-up Julio Cesar Chavez, you should be criticizing Mario Barrios for fighting a washed-up Manny Pacquiao, and you should criticize the World Boxing Council for sanctioning it. That's worse.
You should criticize Oscar De La Hoya for floating the idea that he might make a fight between Zurdo Ramirez and Jake Paul. Zurdo has not one, but 2 alphabet titles.
Now, this is the same Oscar De La Hoya who for years now has criticized every Canelo Alvarez event, unification match or otherwise, every Canelo Alvarez opponent, champion or otherwise, but it's perfectly okay for Zurdo to fight Jake Paul. That's fair game. That's all right. Boxing already doesn't take itself seriously, irrespective of Jake Paul and whatever he's doing.
Oscar De La Hoya is an example. So is the World Boxing Council, who's been in a hurry for years now to get Jake Paul a rank in their rank standings so that they can start charging him sanctioning fees for his events. They want a piece of the action, and that's what it's all about.
You're telling me that Jake Paul is an opportunist for doing what he's doing? What the hell are they? What the hell is everybody else in the sport of boxing? This is why I don't really have a problem with him. I don't get upset when he puts together a show, puts together a fight, an exhibition, or whatever you want to call it. You have Gervonta Davis, who's supposed to be a quote-unquote real boxer, but he's in negotiations to do an event with who? With Jake Paul, not with Shakur Stevenson, not with Devin Haney or Keyshawn Davis, not Teofimo, with Jake Paul.
After Canelo obviously, didn't materialize, was the next one Tank?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that was on the 1 yard line as well, but he has to rematch, Lamont Roach. He wants to get that back. And then we'll be back in discussions with Mr. Gervonta. But, man, this is the nature of boxing. You have massive fights on the 1 yard line and things just fall through.
As you're watching it, he was a gigantic favorite, and this is on the heels of the Canelo thing. Are you like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, though, because I never really thought Tank was that good. It would just take the right fighter to pick him apart, to be honest. Someone who had high activity and wasn't afraid of his power. So I always saw so many holes in his game. So to me, it wasn't that surprising that someone finally gave him some good work.
If you do fight, what weight would it be at?
195.
Oh, wow. So he would go all the way from 40 to 95?
Yeah, I mean, it would be an exhibition.
When Bob Arum said that Jake Paul is actually smarter than me and you, I believe him. I believe that Jake Paul is almost playing a practical joke on boxing by doing what everybody in boxing does, just doing it his own way.
Gervonta Davis has long taken advantage of smaller fighters that he moves up in weight to fight him for an advantage. Now, it would seem he's doing that to Gervonta. It ain't different.
And Gervonta Davis is willing to oblige him. So shouldn't you be mad at the real boxer that isn't Gervonta Davis, because he's supposed to be a bona fide boxer, supposed to also be held to a higher standard? You didn't want to go to Saudi for Devin Haney or Shakur Stevenson, but you'll go to cruiserweight for Jake Paul, and we're supposed to be mad at Jake?
You guys aren't getting the joke. That's what I gather.
If Jake Paul is treating boxing like a joke, maybe it's because sometimes it is, and it's the people in boxing that make it that way. We're supposed to be the esteemed professionals. Sometimes Jake Paul says things to ruffle people's feathers, to stir the pot, like what he said about Canelo in the William Skull fight, that the Canelo he saw, he would have beat him. The Canelo fans immediately got upset. But how is that different from when Jermall Charlo and Jermel Charlo said it, or when Edgar Berlanga said it?
How is that different?
Two of those guys actually shared the ring with Canelo, and in spite of what they said beforehand, they didn't do anything with Canelo. They didn't do anything but run from him. So that when Jake Paul starts piping up, like they did, about what he would do to Canelo, now I see the joke. Now I see the gag.
Now I see the funny side. Now I'm always smiling.
And you should too. So that whenever Jake Paul puts together an event, you see all of these bona fide boxers, these esteemed professionals start to line up single file to be a part of it. That's the gag.
You see the somebodies, the powers that be, and those that influence boxing's infrastructure, its pecking order, lining up to be a part of it too. Jake sees it. Jake knows what he's doing.
He managed to bring Netflix to boxing, doing what he's doing. At a time where the PBC lost Fox and lost Showtime, Top Rank may be losing ESPN, Jake brought Netflix into the boxing space.
I'm not angry with him. And the contribution that he's made to women's boxing. How many opportunities he's getting them?
It's more opportunities than the PBC ever gave any woman boxer, or Top Rank for that matter. I'm not telling you to like Jake Paul. I'm telling you why I understand him and why I'm not angry. Do what you want. Everybody else does.
Be an opportunist. Everybody else is.
Do your shows, make your money. Everybody else wants to.
The difference is you can.